We'll bring today's meeting back to order, and the first thing I got to say is, wow, looks nice in there. Good work to all the employees and who got this furnished and stuff, and looks very nice. I hope the cameras can show around the room a little bit. I don't know how they work, but looking very good. The first thing is to approve of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
You got a motion by Grant, second by Jenny to approve the agenda. Any discussion on that? Oh, we got to do roll call. Go ahead.
Commissioner Whalen? Aye. Commissioner Haney?
Aye.
Commissioner Gross?
Aye.
Commissioner Mojo?
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell?
Aye.
Okay, we have any citizens to be heard?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Then we've got minutes from, do we have minutes?
We do?
Mr. Chair, on the
Yes, we do.
minutes, it's noted that the lease agreement between RDO and Clay County was approved. Can we clarify what that was in the minutes, just for the minutes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Mojo. As a part of the agreement in purchasing the building, RDO is still in need of utilizing the space through the end of this month until their space in Block 9 opens. And so we have had an agreement, and we won't be moving into that space till the end of December.
Correct. I just meant that for the minutes, can we clarify exactly? And if that change is made, I would make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Jenny, second by Kevin to be approved as amended. Any further discussion on the minutes? Roll call.
Commissioner Whalen? Aye. Commissioner Haney?
Aye.
Commissioner Gross?
Aye.
Commissioner Mojo?
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell?
With that, we'll move on to approval of the bills and vouchers.
Move approval.
Got a motion by Kevin. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Grant. Thank you. To approve the bills and vouchers. Any discussion on the bills and vouchers? Roll call.
Commissioner Whalen? Aye. Commissioner Haney?
Aye.
Commissioner Gross?
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Mojo?
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell?
Aye.
Okay, this time we'll bring Kathy and, looks like Cheryl here today. Kathy and Cheryl to give us an update on the COVID-19. I think they've already given us some handouts.
Good morning, good evening.
Good
Mr.
afternoon.
Chair and Commissioners. Feels like morning every time I go to the board meeting, so it's morning for me. You received the handout I gave you on our data, again, that we provide weekly. You see that in Clay County, we have 5,510 cases as of December 7th. Those are the positive cases, so 57 additional reported cases. We have 64 deaths in Clay County. And our 14-day case rate per 10,000 people, and I describe that as that's one of the data pieces that we use for K-12 school planning, and that's 194.58. Now, we see that number has gradually increased over a number of weeks, and as we reviewed this with the superintendents, we also are noted that so many counties across the state have been over 200 now in that 14-day case rate per 10,000 people. The difference for that is, as the rate goes up, initially their plans were, we need to really watch that rate. And again, it's one data piece, but what we're finding is the level of positive cases are happening outside of the school system. They are not internally. So the processes that they have in the school of the protecting the kids and the staff is that they're following the guidance that they've been provided. So they're being very conscientious, again, using when they need to distance learning for some particular grades, and so it's hybrid. But every week they're watching the numbers and they're watching their practices internally, and the spread of this virus has not been prevalent in the school systems, and it's all acquired through the community gatherings that they have. So that's the number we still are watching closely. Minnesota positive cases are 356, 152. Their cumulative deaths are over 4,000 now, 21 newly reported deaths, and the positivity rate is at 7.7%. You see the number of cases then in the U.S. Reaching 15, and then the total deaths across the U.S., 285,564. And then we have the global numbers as well. So the virus, as described by the experts, is not going away. We're expecting to see increases again this month. The virus is still present, and there's still a lot of community spread. So the message as we look at these numbers is we just continue the vigilance of wearing our masks, social distancing, staying home when you're ill, get tested. That's the message that we need to continue until we have vaccine for the public, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Commissioner Campbell had asked for as you go to, I believe it's the third page, the number of the graphs for our Clay County cases by age, and also then our active cases by age. So you can see that we're still in that 15 to 19-year-olds and up to the 34 age group in our active cases. And similar, our largest percentage of cases cumulatively has been the 20 to 24, but we're still seeing those numbers in the 15 to 19-year-olds all the way up through the 30 to 34. So those tend to be the cumulative cases by age and the active cases, and we're still seeing the spread in those age categories. And then the last page, just a repeat of the Clay County positive cases, the 14 case rate in the Minnesota positive cases, those no longer needing isolation. And then the graphs depict that as well. So when the specimen was collected and the patient no longer needing isolation. So those are the numbers. When we started in March, you see the graph going up to November, and it's still going on an upswing with cases. Any questions that I can answer in regards to the data? We can go into then the vaccine priority for public health is now we're into the vaccine planning. We're going to be receiving initial doses of vaccine in all the states, and in Minnesota, we should be receiving that vaccine, and it won't be directly, the first initial doses do not come to public health directly. They'll be going to the healthcare systems who have the capacity and capability to handle that ultra cold, which is a very highly sensitive vaccine that requires an unusual temperature management. Because it's unusual, we usually have frozen vaccine and refrigerated vaccine. So this is new for this COVID vaccine with the first company that is delivering that. So we'll have that availability. The emergency use authorization will be coming about December, sometime this week, December 10th through the 14th, and then they'll be able to start vaccinating. Now in Minnesota, there's a requirement, there's lots of requirements across the state, federal requirements that there is some training for those that are vaccinating. We have to have a vaccination plan, which we've developed that and have submitted that to the state. So there's a lot of pieces to put in play. Initially, the vaccine that is coming, the ultra cold, will be to healthcare workers, and then that will be phase 1. So those healthcare workers, and it's coming in various stages of, there won't be a large portion of vaccine initially. So we'll start with the healthcare providers, healthcare workers, and then it will also be long-term care, residents, and staff. So we'll be receiving, the healthcare facilities will be receiving that vaccine, and then they will be able to distribute it once it has gone through the process of authorization through the FDA. So that should happen, again, before the end of December. So we're expecting after that, like week 1, I can give you a kind of a targeted plan. So week 1, we're expecting 46,800 doses from Pfizer, and that's the first ultra-cold distribution. And then in week 2, we're expecting 94,800. Now, this is across the state of Minnesota, just to clarify, it's not in Clay County. So 94,800 is the week 2, and that's Moderna, that's the other company that's providing the vaccine. And then in week 3, 41,800. So the tentative plan is in Minnesota, we should be getting around 183,000 doses for the first phase. So, and it is a 2-dose vaccine, so the first initial dose will be given, and these two companies have a variance of about a week. So one of the companies, it's 3 weeks later, you can receive the second dose. You have to have the same vaccine. You cannot, we cannot provide vaccine from 2 different companies to the same individual. So one company is 3 weeks and one is 4 weeks. So we'll see that second dose, and that'll be tracked pretty closely.
So Kathy, so the number of doses, are they going to give those, you said 180,000?
About 183 is the projected plan.
So are they going to give all of those out as a first round? Or are they going to divide that by 2 and save for 3 weeks later?
One thing to clarify, and thank you, Commissioner Campbell, for that question. The vaccine is going directly to the healthcare system, so MDH will not be a warehouse to store that. And so that will be written in their plan, that they need to, so an individual gets the first dose of Pfizer, they need to save that second dose. They need to have that second dose available for that individual. So, they'll have to, you're correct.
They won't be waiting for a second shipment?
Correct.
And they have to reserve that?
They do have to reserve.
Keep it cold for 3 weeks and then?
Yes, because you get the first dose, and it will give you that jump your immunity system a bit. It will be the second dose that really gives you, provides the full immunity. And after those 2 doses, you still have about 1 to 3 weeks before you're actually have the full immunity from that vaccine. But you are correct. They are saving that second dose, not waiting for the additional shipments. The federal government is the one that tells us how much we receive, when we receive it. They also have that prioritization plan. The state, we have a team at Minnesota Department of Health that is also working on recommendations for priorities, also developing kind of in line with the federal government, but kind of the plan for specific communities.
And then one more question, if I could. So it's going to those medical facilities. What about our first responders? When are they going to get it?
We have some phases that have been developed, and we're working through that. So the priorities initially are long-term care and healthcare workers, and then in the next phase, it will be first responders, other, I suspect, law enforcement, sheriff's department, the police department, some public health folks that are going to be providing vaccine. So there's another phase that we're working through on our plans with the Minnesota Department of Health. So those will be in an initial phase. There will be some, we had to document how many essential and critical workers we have in our county. So we included all of those individuals so that we would have that in our plan, that those could all be covered. This vaccine is for adults only, 18 and older right now. They don't have enough data and studies to have a recommendation for under 18. That may come in the future, but for this time frame, it's still 18 and older. There will be no sign up for the initial vaccines. There's not, you can't sign up for it. The people that have entered into a contract with Minnesota Department of Health they'll be determining that. Public Health, again, as I mentioned last week, we entered into a contract as well to be a provider for the vaccine. So initially with the priority areas, there isn't a requirement for them to notify the providers or for us. That will just happen. Down the road, when we're doing mass dispensing for the general population, that will be in 2021. That will be a different story, but for now, that's how it's going to be distributed. Is there any questions about the vaccine or anything that I can answer? That's the plans right now. We'll know more. We have multiple meetings every week, so we'll continue to provide more information as we work with the Minnesota Department of Health on the vaccine planning. And I'll let Cheryl talk a little bit about some of the other information we wanted to provide.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you. So first of all, just present you with some data from our vault testing site, our saliva testing site. For the week of November 29th, the number of tests were 4,518. Number of Minnesota residents was 2,160. Non-Minnesota residents were 2,358. Total number with results available of this report were 2,099. There were 346 positive results with a rate for the week, positivity rate of 16.48%. Any questions on those numbers?
That 346, that's the result of all 4,518 tests?
Yes, that is correct. Commissioner Campbell, last week you had asked a little bit more information about antibody testing. We do have that availability in the Fargo-Moorhead community. Generally from the CDC, the antibodies usually start developing within 1 to 3 weeks after infection. They still don't have enough information to say how protected someone might be from being affected, again, if they have antibodies to the virus. There have been some confirmed and suspected cases of reinfection from the virus that have been reported, but those are very rare. So basically, until the scientists can get more data on how much protection antibodies provide against being affected again, they just are urging individuals to take steps to protect themselves and others by wearing a mask, doing the social distancing of at least 6 feet, and washing their hands.
Thank you for that, Cheryl. I watched a little bit of a national conference today, and there was some dialogue about there, and it goes to what you're talking about in terms of the sequence of who's going to get the vaccine and when, and there was some commentary today that I heard that they said that those who have had COVID might fall to the very end, and I suppose that's because they probably are at a lesser risk, because I think the data is out there that being reinfected, it doesn't have real high numbers so far.
Sure. And I think part of that too is just taking the actions to protect yourself as well. The other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit about, of course, it's out on the news and everything, is the change that the CDC made a week ago, actually, with the quarantine time. So this afternoon, Governor Walz gave a briefing with Commissioner of Health Jan Malcolm and Director of Infectious Disease at MDH, Chris Ayersman, and talked about the fact that they are now going to implement, as of today, the changes that have come about from the CDC for shortening quarantine time. So CDC, when they reviewed the data and considered the risks and benefits of sticking with the 14-day quarantine recommendation or shortening under certain conditions, and they're still saying that the 14-day quarantine is still the safest recommendation, but we know that there have been cases where it's very impacted heavily to people that may not have sick leave if they're just working at an hourly salary, and those types of things. So it's made it difficult for people to stay home for 14 days. Evidence is showing that the risk of a person in quarantine becoming affected is highest in the earliest days of that quarantine versus in say the 10th through the 14th day. And shortening that quarantine time when the risk is much lower makes people more likely to actually follow that is that there'll be better compliance with slightly shortened quarantine times. Recommendation can be a net gain from a public health standpoint. And I hear that frequently on the various calls that I take during the course of a work day. And of course, the risk goes down as you get into those final days of the 14-day period, but there still is a small risk of transmission until they're past day 14. So basically, for shortened quarantine options, a 10-day quarantine would be applicable if you have not been tested, and then also a 7-day quarantine if received a negative PCR test, and a saliva test would be considered a PCR test. That must occur on day 5 or later after exposure. So you still want to continue to monitor your symptoms for those 14 days, isolate and get tested if your symptoms develop, and of course, wear your mask, maintain your 6 feet of social distance, and washing your hands to just follow the prevention guidance.
On that quarantine period, I mean, if I start feeling sick and I don't go get tested for 4 days, and it takes another 2 days to get your test back,
Generally,
when does my quarantine period start? When I start getting sick or when I test it?
generally, the shortened quarantine time is for people who do not have symptoms.
Yes, for the shortened, okay. But I was just thinking as far as if I am sick for 2-3 days already, go get tested. You get your positive test, are you still 14 days or do you go from the date you got sick or?
Yeah, Commissioner Gross, it would be from the time your symptoms started and you'd be isolated for 10 days.
10 days.
So 10 days are those that are symptomatic, but if you're sick, if you have the various symptoms we've talked about with COVID, you definitely need to be isolating yourself, but then go get tested. And then it's 10 days from when your symptoms started.
Okay, thank you.
So this is basically applying to contacts of positive cases, not to an actual positive case. You still have to stay home for your 10 days.
Okay. Very good. Anything?
And Mr. Chair, one more comment for, we are getting a lot of comments and questions about how safe the vaccine is because it's getting out so quickly compared to other vaccines. So I wanted to speak to, although it was developed more quickly than it ever has been, the speed did not decrease the safety. And part of that is they did phase 1 and 2 trials simultaneously. So they had people that were testing immune response and safety. And because of the manufacturing phase, they typically would not develop all the vaccine without knowing the safety measures, because that would be a great amount of money that they would spend and then to produce something that has to be thrown out. So because they were funded for all of this, the phases, they were able to do them simultaneously, and the manufacturing started right away without waiting for a period of time when the phases were to see, is this vaccine safe and viable? So to, just an explanation for the public to understand that because it is coming out quicker, there was a lot of resources provided to make that happen. So the vaccine, the safety standards have all been met, just as they have for any other vaccine. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Any questions from the?
There's a Facebook page, Clay County Corona Counter, that kind of gives up-to-date daily updates on what our numbers are. And I think for the public to know that even though our 14-day case rate right now is 194, that end date on that collection was November 21st. So that was before the testing of Thanksgiving. And I think I would just like to thank the public for answering the pleas from people to be cautious and to be mindful of your exposure, because I think it's important to note that the numbers have dipped a little bit, not completely zero, but they have gone down a little bit, and so the measures that people are taking are working.
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is Dave Hilberbo outside, or? Thought I saw him out there before. Okay, next thing we got Dave and Justin and Steve here for, we gotta miss one.
Nope, never mind.
You just wanted to help out, huh? Appreciate all the help I can get there, Steve. Here we got Dave and Justin here for the updates on about 4 or 5 different items. First one, we'll take the approval of the design engineering contract for reconstruction for Casad 2 in Comstock.
Correct. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Beautiful setting we have here tonight. Our first item is for a reconstruction contract for County Road 2. It's in the city of Comstock. It was currently on our 5-year plan, and we've got some recent changes in the project, so we're going to get rolling on the design, or we'd like to anyway. We talked about it in-house a little bit, and we feel that the last couple projects that are real similar to this, we've contracted with Alteg Engineering, and we'd recently met with the city of Comstock, wanted to make sure if they had any city engineering that they were working with anybody or that they had done with previously. They did not have a preference or an engineer that they currently call a city engineer. They feel comfortable moving down the direction that we had talked about as we've met with them previously, talking about the project a little bit, the scope on it. Drainage is probably their biggest concern, I believe, and we knew that, and we're going to address that, as well as the roadway width. They really didn't want to see a narrower roadway, so I think we're probably going to put back the exact same type of a section that's in there today. There's a lot of traffic that goes through the county. There's a lot of larger vehicles, a lot of ag traffic that comes through town, so we agree with that as well. And we'd like to get moving on a construction. You know, we got to start with some design and move with it as quick as we can. There's a potential for a 2021 project if we can get going that fast. I know there's going to be some railroad permits and some authorizations needed from the railroad. So that's probably, I don't know, unless you could think of anything else that's going to hang up.
The railroad will be the biggest hang-up.
But if it goes smooth, there might still be a chance we can get this thing constructed in 2021. We also have the mill and overlay from the east city limits to about 5.5 miles east of town. So there's going to be some coordination there as well to make sure that we don't have too much construction and causing impacts for the users as well.
Go ahead.
I know that the residents down there have been very patient in terms of, their project was, the other piece, from east of town, was pushed to make room for another project. And so I think the citizens have really been patient, and I think would be fine with some short-term inconveniences to make sure we get that done together. And I know you said this, but I want to make it clear that this is a project that really was designed in collaboration with what the city of Comstock needs. They've been present on those conversations. I've heard from folks about them being part of that, and so I really want it to be clear that this is what Comstock is needing and wanting, and it fits in hand with another project that we need to do, the rest of 2, and I think if we can get this done, the sooner the better.
Okay. Do we need a motion on this thing, or are you just gonna, this is just information?
We'd like to get approval to commence with a contract with Alteg Engineering. They put, you know, there's a lot of scoping work that has to be done to this. We don't exactly know final dollar amount, but it is real standard. It's an 8% construction bid put together, so it's, like I said, it's in line with other projects that we've done.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is also now in coordination with the diversion project, right?
Correct.
So out of the negotiation, that's going to be funded through diversion project?
Correct.
So as we enter into any contracts, do we need to go through a dual authorization type of a deal with the diversion authority?
So I reached out to Joel Paulson from the Diversion Authority, and he said they're currently working on a cost agreement for the county. It's a diversion county. So there will be another cost agreement coming forth, explaining details on how the funds will come to Clay County.
So I guess because this now becomes part of the diversion, they're also, and it's a federal project.
They're supposed to be getting back to us on that, because we were kind of wondering that ourselves. To what level of a project is this going to be? Our plan was at a minimum to put together like a normal state aid type projects. It would run through the state for approvals, which we do this sometimes. The state wouldn't have state aid funds in it, but they will review it, and we would do it the same process. Whether it also has a federal portion to it or not, we haven't heard yet. Is that correct?
Well,
Correct.
and I think it's fine for us to be proudly approving this, but I think we should approve it contingent on knowing whether we need to have certain different specifications, for example, federal specifications as opposed to state.
Right.
Otherwise, we've thrown money down the drain if we do it one way and find out it had to be done a different way. So I just, with that coordinate, I would move approval of the design engineering contract subject to coordination with the diversion authority.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kevin, second by Grant, to approve the contract there in Comstock. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay, we're moving to the second item you've got is the approval of the design engineering contract for the project in Blendon.
This is for the turn lane project, partially on Highway 10, partially on Park Avenue. We've been working with the city of Glendon as well as MnDOT on this. Clay County did apply for and receive LPP funds, which is,
Local partnership program through MnDOT.
which means that they will pay a portion of the construction costs or the construction costs, and then the partners, which is Clay County and City of Glendon, are 50-50 splitting the engineering as well as right-of-way and utilities. So there's going to need to be a signal pole that needs to be adjusted there so we can make room for the turn lane so that the buses and the semi-trucks can make this corner as they go eastbound and turn south, so they don't have to go into the northbound lane. It'll make it safer. Right now, the larger vehicles are forced to stay more in the eastbound lane and then take it wide, and then at the same time, a smaller vehicle could try to sneak in and turn because they don't really know which direction they're going. And luckily, we have not had an accident, but I've had numerous calls and complaints from the buses as well as anybody driving a semi-truck turning southbound there, that there's close calls that are a very important project. And the design engineering contract is looking at about $35,450. And like I said, that will be split. Is that the full contract?
Yep.
That'll be split 50-50 with the county and the city. We do have some preliminary layouts in the works now, so we're going to reach out to the landowner in the corner. We are going to need some right-of-way. Those costs would also be shared between the city and the county, but once we get that right-of-way acquired, the project should move really smoothly. Right-of-way has always been a little bit of a hurdle to get, so we want to get moving on that as quick as we can.
Motion to approve the request, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Second.
we got a motion by Jenny, second by Kevin. The question is, are we looking at next year? We are looking at next year for this project, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, I know he says as soon as possible, but,
2021, yes.
okay, very good. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, I'm,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, with that, we'll move to item number 3, a bridge replacement in Cromwell Township.
Yeah, the township came to us with concerns on a need for a improvement on a pipe. It's a very low volume road, but there's some flooding issues. They've been working with Houston Engineering, so we'd like to continue moving forward on this. There is township bridge funds that would be available to aid them in this. It would be whether the county designs these type of projects or a consultant designs it doesn't really matter. There's both eligible by town bridge funds. Townships are always responsible for the first $10,000 in engineering and the first $10,000 in construction costs. So what we normally tell them is they're responsible for a maximum of $20,000 on any of these bridge replacement type projects, and this one would be no different. So we do have a design contract with Houston Engineering. They've already done the hydraulics on it, which they always do. Has there been any additional work on this one?
Nope.
Mr. Chair, I've been present at the watershed when this has come up and have heard the discussion, and it is something that has been an issue, and I appreciate that we're in a position to address it and change it, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We've got a motion by Cheney, second by Grant, to assist in the Cromwell Township Bridge. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Okay, with that, we'll move on to the approval of engineering services contract.
So what this is anytime we remove a wooden bridge, you have to have asbestos and contaminated materials report. And we've done dozens of these, and what we typically like to do is lump several of them together because they've got to mobilize in, drive out to the site, look for any contaminated materials, any lead, any asbestos, and we've got a package of 6 here put together. Justin got a couple of different price quotes, and we've used several different consultants for this, and it kind of bounces around. Sometimes we get a better number from one or the other, but this is with WSN. They have done these with us before. I know we've used at least 3 or 4 different vendors. Do you remember the last one that we used?
We used WSN for the last one, and before that it was Braun.
Braun Intertech. So we've used different consultants, and I'd like to move forward on these. These have to be done anytime you remove a wooden bridge, so we'd like to move forward on it if we could.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, we've got a motion by Grant to approve the agreement with WSN.
Second.
Got a second by Jenny. Any further discussion on this? Roll call.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Mojo?
Aye.
Commissioner Campbell?
And next time, we're going to go to Resolution 2020-38 concerning maintenance resolution with the Barnesville TA grant, transportation alternatives.
So this is a request from the city of Barnesville that the county sponsor additional trail addition, I guess. They've got a couple of trails that they're trying to join together. In looking at it, the project makes sense to me. What they'd like to do is apply for these transportation alternative funds, these dollars, and in order to receive them, the county has to pass a couple resolutions, one stating that, one, we will sponsor the project, and then two, it's a maintenance of the project. And essentially, we'll have another document, if they get chosen, it would be the same. Right now, there's the second resolution is between the state and the county, stating that somebody's gonna maintain this thing. If they do get chosen and we build it, we'll have one between the county and the city, basically stating that they will maintain it, not the county. So like I said, this is just a preliminary. This is for them to apply for the grants to see if they can move forward on the funds for it. It's kind of down where the Buffalo Red River watershed is. I think it's 13th Street, and like I said, it makes sense. They've done a bunch of work down there. There's development down there, and it looks to me like it's a good link between two trails.
No, I definitely feel like it's a great project that would be well utilized. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion by Jenny, second by Kevin to approve the contract with Barnesville for the transportation alternatives. This is going to be for Resolution 38 and 39, or just?
Correct. Yeah, there's two resolutions. One is to sponsor the project, and then the second one is for the maintenance of the project.
Okay, we're covering them both there. Okay, roll call.
Aye.
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 Hey.
I would like to just make one note on item number 4, the contract for the bridge, the bridges there. If any of those are on township structures, that portion of that would be covered by the town bridge fund. So the $7,500 is the contract to do all the work, and some of those are probably on the township system, so those would be covered under the town bridge fund. So it's not completely county dollars for those.
Okay, thank you.
I know I've probably asked this before, but the gravel tax, could that ever go into upkeep of some of these bridges that are directly affected because of gravel hauling?
So the way the gravel tax comes, is it comes into our budget as revenues, and I guess the answer is yes. You know, right now, it generally comes in on the revenue side. And then on the expense side, we spend it in many different ways, but as far as specifically taking that money for a specific item, I guess, I would, absolutely could. Hopefully with all the work that got done this year, our gravel tax is a little higher. It's been lower, and we've been questioning that a little bit, and what we've been hearing is the actual projects that are being done in the county, as far as like big road projects, are down. So that's what we've heard, so I'm hoping this year, there was an awful lot of gravel hauled this past fall for one big site, I know in particular, and I'm hoping that the gravel tax numbers are up, because the townships rely on those dollars too. So it'd be nice to see everybody have a little better share of that, or a bigger share.
And part of that funding also comes from the state bridge bonding too, right?
On the gravel taxes, or?
Well, she talks about reserving some dollars to help pay for bridge replacement or
Oh,
Just
absolutely.
maintenance, right?
or just maintenance? Yeah, okay, maintenance would, okay. Yeah, I think that's worthy of a discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve, now you can go over there. We'll go into committee reports now. Kevin, you want to start us out today? My votes are very few in that one. I mean, they're short notes, very short notes. I mean, I didn't write down much.
Okay, so, and then, so that did bring me to yesterday afternoon from 1 to 4:30. We had our annual AMC meeting, and I normally like those when we get together in person, and there was recognition for Commissioner Whalen and Commissioner Haney for retirement. Congratulations to you guys on behalf of PNC counties. And again, today, before this, we met again regarding the solid waste transfer process, and Commissioner Whalen and I and Steve and Kirk are going to be meeting tomorrow with representatives of the city to really start to figure out, taking real ownership, there's no doubt about that, but how the operations are going to work. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Okay, Jim, did you have something?
Yes, on Tuesday, December 1st, after our regular board meeting, I attended can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We had a building committee meeting and we discussed the cleaning contract at the DMV. And we decided to go with our own staff and forward to the pick. Then on Wednesday, I attended the moorhead planning commission. And we forwarded a CUP recommendation for a cell tower just east of my shop, and also a CUP for the Inspired Church. On Thursday, I attended the joint policy meeting. We discussed the upcoming IDR, and we had a presentation for Then on Thursday, after that meeting, I attended the Clay County Mental Health, Mental Health and LAC, and we heard a report from Juvenile Detention Center and a survey that took of the juveniles that are in the facility, and we heard agency reports from all the providers. And let's see. Then Friday I attended the downtown Moorhead master plan meeting, and then yesterday I attended that wonderful virtual AMC meeting, 3 hours. We got to have 1 hour and speak. That was very impressive to sit for an hour with that. I would agree with Commissioner Campbell about shortening up the IDR, but that's my full report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Grant, I don't want to forget you this week, so.
Let's see, I had a meeting with Joel Paulson and Commissioner-elect Ebinger last week to give Mr. Ebinger an update on the diversion and what's going on with that project. Had the PIC meeting, we'll be bringing some issues forward that we discussed today on that. I also attended virtually the AMC meeting, which was, as Commissioner Campbell said, painful. And equally as painful, we had an MRC meeting that lasted just as long, so twice in the last couple days, so. And then Commissioner Campbell mentioned we've had several meetings on the solid waste issues, and we'll have more information on that in the future. And that was it for me.
Jenny?
Thank you. Last week, I attended the MetroCog Executive Committee meeting. We had discussions on employee COLA recommendations and a reclassification of an employee that is going above and beyond the expectations. I've also had conversation in the last week with the mayor of Hawley in regards to MetroCog ordinance updates, and then also discussed in that same phone call the echoes the dispatch concerns that I had spoke of 2 weeks ago with Barnesville. Lakes and Prairies Shared Governance Board meeting last week. We had good updates from all of those partners. Head Start attendance has gone down a little bit, but they're continuing to outreach to as many people as possible. We had an update on their facility in Breckenridge that is now complete. And then updates on the different grants that they're in the process of working through. As I reported on that CHIPS grant, the housing grant, they have many applications on that. And so it's good to see that there's an agency there that can address those issues. It's disheartening to see the great need that is out there for people that are looking for a little bit of help, but good news that they're able to address that. And then I had a Cass Clay Food Partners meeting. We had updates from different companies in regards to dairy operations. Interesting conversation, how different local ordinances and policies affect their ability to do business there. And then I also attended the AMC conference virtual meeting yesterday. The speaker that spoke did such a great job. I think gave us lots of information to think about, even though it was quite long, but I thought it was well worth the time. I will say that I've never seen those policy groups give such abbreviated updates, and we were able to act on all of those policy platform recommendations. So I hope that by the time our legislative conference is here, we'll have the opportunity to advocate for some of the much needed changes that outstate Minnesota needs desperately. But that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. On Tuesday, I had the building committee, which Jim has already reported on, but the cleaning contract, it was just a recommendation at this time. That'll be brought before the board, I think, next week.
Is that for the DMV and RDO building?
No, that's just for the RDO building. I think the DME, we've got that covered at the present time.
Right now we do, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then on Wednesday at the One Watershed, One Plan meeting again, where we approved the plan to move on. Not much further was done at that meeting. That afternoon, I went to the Holly with Dave and Justin, and we had some discussion on the road that's gonna be worked on next week. About, there's 5 blocks on County Highway 33 coming into Holly. There's a lot of discussion on how wide the road's gonna be, the sidewalks and stuff like that. And I think it's gonna involve a few more meetings down there. Sunday, the MRC meeting, which was held virtually. We did have the one speaker, Terry Luigi, and he was with the U.S. Department of Rural Development. And he seemed to be talking a lot of grants that are available for radio equipment, for jails, for solid waste. And it looked to me like that was I don't know if we're in contact with this guy or who works with him or not, but if Kirkus would contact with him or not, it looked to me like they had some grants available, and he was almost begging for people to give him a call, you know, we've got some money for you. But I thought it'd be someone that we should probably contact. We probably already are, I don't know, so, okay. Yesterday, we had the AMC meeting. I guess that's been reported on enough already. And today, we had the PIC meeting. Again, we discussed the cleaning contract with the DMC concerning variable hour employees. We discussed some moving of a employee in the juvenile detention center. We discussed moving a supervisor to a different grade. That'll be worked on by Mr. O'Donnell. We also had a long discussion on the overtime pay for employees, non-exempt employees, I think it's non-exempt employees that are working on, that work overtime when there's during this emergency. So we'll work on that policy there. And then we went through the end of the year items that we need board approval on, and they'll be coming forward next week or the week after. Okay, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last Tuesday, I participated in the building committee that's been addressed by Commissioner Haney and Commissioner Gross. Also participated in the solid waste meeting that's been addressed by Commissioner Campbell and Whalen. I met with Darren and Brian Melton on a series of county personnel issues. I also had a number of discussions this past week with Lori Johnson. That afternoon, I met with Shelley Jeffers on discussed some of their court space needs. And I also met with Georgia on a series of custodial issues. Participated in the Joint Powers Committee that's been covered by Commissioner Campbell and Haney, and also the AMC, an AMC webinar where they discussed budget information from the state and possible state funding in response to the most recent executive order and in helping those businesses affected. We had county management that morning and provided an update of COVID and year-end issues. On the 3rd, also I met with Brian Melton, Shelley Jeffers, and the judges here in Clay County, again on the space concerns. And the 4th, I met with Joe, and we began looking at developing a plan for when we are looking to move to the south location of how that will work. Yesterday, I participated in a discussion with construction engineers in a series of subs on the Clay County Tunnel discussion. Here, if commissioners are aware, we had some issues with seepage this past year, and they've been working to come up with a solution for that. They're hoping to start on Monday next week with a wrap-up of into January. And right now, that would be the final portion of the project for the law enforcement center. Participated in the AMC meeting that's been covered by all of our commissioners. Today, we had some TNT preparation, a solid waste meeting that's been discussed, and also the PIC meeting. Just wanted to touch base quick with the CARES. Lori did send in our final paperwork to the state of Minnesota last night. We did end up spending the full dollar amount allotted to Clay County as part of the CARES funding. Now that the final piece is done, we will be bringing forward a category breakdown for the full board to see how that final breakdown looked. Darren also has been working this week. As Commissioner Campbell addressed last week, we're going to begin the meeting in preparation of the audit that will have to take place based on the funding. And Darren has been working this week with the application that he created at the beginning of this process, connecting all the board action to that application. And so, and hopefully by next week, we're hoping to have a report about the possible reopening for state testing. So that concludes my report.
Okay. Yes.
If I may, I think the piece that Steve maybe didn't report on is the huge lift that it took to get this room ready. If any of you follow Clay County on their Facebook page, they went live at about 2 o'clock to test the sound, and the room did not look like this. And so I know that there were a lot of staff members that really put in some time to make sure that this room was ready so that the citizens can actively take part in their government, which is the reason we decided to move forward on a space like this. So just thank you to all of you for the work that it took to get it ready for this evening.
I have to also comment on that. I mean, I was in here at 3:30 this afternoon, and there was no way that we were going to have a meeting in here tonight. And it just, they did a great job to Mark and to Tim for the, looked like our technology as far as our microphones are working great. I hope it's picking up good out there. I did notice that Jim, when he's coming in, I don't know whether that's Jim's computer or whether it's our input, whatever you want to call it, to see that whether we're hearing it good enough or not. But may have to test that out somewhat. But, other than that, anybody else got something? Okay, Truth and Taxation starts in a few minutes. With that, we're adjourned. What is this about? Is this about our taxation, our budget for next year, setting the budget, the levy limit? If there's people present that are looking at bringing their tax statements in to work on, as we had in years past, that's not what this meeting is about. If there's people, if you're coming to the meeting, please sign in at the door there. And with that, I think, Steve, you're going to tell us about the rest of it, huh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, and I'd like to welcome those attending our Truth and Taxation, both here in person and also online. I would like to note, in addition to the number of department heads that we have here present, we also have a number that are also participating on our Teams platform. Again, just for our citizens, Commissioner Mojo during our last meeting spoke about our new location. We are located on the 3rd floor of the courthouse, right across from our previous board room. And so I think the great part about this, we're already seeing that certainly the positive things allows us to provide the government, as Commissioner Mojo said, in action. It also provides some additional technology that we didn't have in the other location that will hopefully serve us well moving forward. We had a few hiccups, I know, in the first meeting. We have to get used to turning ourselves on and off and then turning this back on when we talk again. But we're excited about the opportunity to be here. As Commissioner, Mr. Chair mentioned, we do have budget packets at the door. We'll be walking through those tonight. So as commissioners, I know that you've spent a significant amount of time already since May going through these with us. But again, if you have questions or clarifications that you need to make during this presentation, please do so. And again, we'll allow feedback from our citizens once we complete. Again, I just want to mention we did start this process back in May. Our department heads began with preparation, both in their departments, brought those forward to Lori and myself. We went through those different processes. In most cases, we brought those budgets to you for your feedback. On September 22nd of this year, this board approved Resolution 2020-28, establishing the preliminary budget. At Truth and Taxation tonight, we're going to be going through this packet of information. And again, if you have any concerns or comments, please do so. The first page of the packet is the county levy. I know for many of our citizens, this is probably the form they're most interested in. This form shows how we break down the dollar amounts that we're going to be asking for our citizens in 2021. The Clay County tax levy is $37,210,718. If you take a look by category, our levy is broken down into general fund of 59.85%, social services of 28.56%, road bridge 10.11%, debt retirement 1.33%, and building fund 0.13%. As the taxes come in, our auditor Lori Johnson allocates the dollars into the appropriate funding for each of these departments. The breakdowns that you see this morning are very similar to what they were as percentage-wise in 2020. The only minor increase that we see has to do with the road and bridge projects. We did also had some additional costs that we were going to be looking at this year based on projections of lower revenue in this category. Originally, we were looking at is up to 15% less revenue this year. We had made some adjustments to the budgets moving forward. Currently, the Highway Department receives their revenues through the gas tax, motor vehicle registration tax, motor vehicle sales and lease tax, and state sales tax on auto parts. We just had a meeting this afternoon with the auditor's office and David Overbo, and the new outlook that we did receive shows more of a projection of about 9%. And so my goal and hope for this board is that when we come to set our final levy, that we may be able to knock a little bit more off of that category. The second page that you see is our budgeted expenses. As you can see, we're projecting $109,383,977. This breaks down into 7 categories. I think when you look at our expenses as a whole, our greatest but most costly asset is our staff here, and so we do have those fixed costs that are factored in there. One of the things that we looked at in this breakdown here, one of the pies that's a little bigger than it normally is our solid waste fund, and the solid waste is an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund is a business or a department that acts as a business and therefore isn't a part of the levy, but we did want to make sure that we showed that. We are looking at having a transfer station project in 2021. We're looking to start in the spring. And so the reason that category is as large as it is has to do with that project. As you're aware, there's a pretty significant difference between the levy amounts that we saw in the expenses listed here on page 2. I think it's important for our citizens to understand that as a county, we act as a pass-through both for state and federal funds through different federal state mandates, and really acting as an arm of the state. And so we receive dollars to make sure from those from government agencies to make up the difference in the balance of our revenues and our expenditures. Private business, corporate, and government, COVID-19 has certainly had an impact on our proposed budgets. And I think when you look at those different things that we have here at the county, when you look at public health, you look at social services and the impacts that the COVID has had on a county attorney's office, part of the increases that you're seeing in some of our expenses are to deal with those different issues. Our page 3 gives us a levy history over the last 16 years. If you look during those 16 years, we range anywhere from negative 3.71% in 2012 up to 9.33% in 2007. If you take a look at the average of our levies over the last 16 years, we're at 4.97%, or if you take out the minus the negative in 2012, we are at 5.53. And looking at what we've talked about through our levy in truth and taxation, in certifying the levy, we are proposing 6.27% is through that process. It's important for our citizens to understand that the list of percentage of increases here do not take into consideration new construction growth. Clay County here has been fortunate over the years to have growth experiences between probably 1.15 and 1.5%, with this year being 1.28%. So factoring that in, as we've talked about previously, we're at 4.99%. I think another important point to note is what stands out when you look at the different levy history is the consistency that this board has taken in their approach to levy increases. And being consistent and setting the levy, we don't see the spikes that you sometimes see in other areas that create both short and long-term consequences. And I think that a lot of that goes to the foresight of this board's planning and making sure they're good stewards of your tax dollars. If you take a look at page 4, we have our Clay County budget history. Again, if we take a look up in the left-hand area that starts with the revenues, again, we talked about our levy and that we create, but we also receive those state and federal funds, and we also acquire different fees that through the county's operations. And so again, when we look at total revenues budgeted for 2021, we are projecting $92,753,375. Again, if you scan down some of the documents that, again, that we've already covered on page 3, our expenditures are projected at $383,977. And again, I think it's important to understand from our citizens' standpoint that we're not operating in deficit spending. Rather, it's a gap that's created by our departments utilizing their internal service, looking to save for larger purchases or projects. These dollars are going to be spent and recognized in 2021, but have been budgeted for and saved for multiple years. These funds utilized will make up the difference between the revenues and expenditures. Utilizing internal services is another way that Clay County uses the ability to minimize the spikes in our levy. And so, again, one of the items that you'll see here in the expenditures is that solid waste project that's included there. Pages both 5 and 6 look at our budgetary expenses by department. I think that I don't plan to go through each of these items because we've thoroughly gone through those either through board discussion or through requests of this board, and also are examining it with Lori Johnson. I do want to touch on a few of the highlighted areas just because they may stand out to members of the public. The technology service, victim witness, planning and zoning, all are issues that we spoke about last week that are part of our new requests. Again, they may vary from the additional increase to our remote infrastructure and also the need to make sure that we have staff that can adequately run that technology piece. Planning and zoning also has $20,000 as part of its comprehensive plan. That's not going to be covered by the MetroCrog's work that they're doing. Public health, we see an increase there, and again, the demands for services in response to COVID-19 has certainly impacted that budget. Contract tracing, funding that will really need to make sure that we have to continually meet the demands of the pandemic. As we move down towards the bottom, we have the Metro Council. The Metro Council really breaks their budget into 2 categories. We have operations and overhead, and that's generally they receive funding through the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. But there is a 20% local match that's required to receive these funds, and that's broken down regionally, and their part of that is paid through this piece. The other piece, or where the increase comes, is there's also contract planning services, and Commissioner Mojo can probably speak to this greater than I. There are additional fees that MetroCog contracts for consultants as they're doing different projects. There aren't projects that always come before the council each year, but this year we do have an increase or a consultant fee that is attached to their request, and that is the difference this year as far as what they're asking for. West Central Initiative, last year, all counties were approached by West Central Initiative to increase their contribution to better serve the economic development through our region, and that we moved that from $8,000 to $10,000. And also the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development and Abatement Program. Our contribution to the Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Committees stayed flat in 2021. But the abatement program are subject to the number of people who participate. And in this case, fortunately, we have about $400,000 worth of abatement program next year. The unallocated general increase can be attributed to basically two things. We had a 14% increase in health insurance last year and a 23% increase to our MCIT costs. I would note that as part of this, we did have a reduction in the juvenile detention costs. The juvenile facility does participate in an 11 county cooperative service agreement, and each year they have a 2-year look back. And the number of beds that Clay County utilized during that 2-year look back had decreased. We also, with the expansion of the juvenile center, have also experienced the ability to bring in additional non-members, and that was pretty significant. Last year, we were able to bring in over $800,000 that we were able to offset the costs of both Clay County and all of our other 10-member counties. And so that was a goal, and they were able to bring that to fruition, and hopefully we'll be able to do that in continuing years. The next page that we're looking at has to do with the real estate projections. I think this document shows the impacts of if the value of the property had stayed flat from 2020 to 2021. The examples that you have before you in your packet are based on the City of Moorhead properties, but Lori has the ability to create these documents for any city in Clay County. When we look at the information here, we look at homes with market values of $150,000, $200,000, $250,000, and $415,000. The information ends at $415,000 because that's where the market value credit ends. Historically, when we've had truth and taxation, we've looked at that $150,000 property. And so when we have a culmination of all of our taxes, we're looking at the county, the school district, the city or township, the EDA, and the watershed. So on a $150,000 property, Clay County, if they were to adopt this current budget, would see an additional $22.10 for its citizens. The school district is proposed at $44.53. The city or township is at 48 cents. The EDA does not have a levy, so they are at negative $4.47. And the watershed is $1.76. And so a culmination of that would be the property owner in the city of Moorhead with a market value of $150,000, again, assuming no change in market value. Again, we're fortunate to live in a community where that generally doesn't happen. But that citizen would pay $64.41, or roughly $5.37 per month. Again, you can go down that file for the 200,000, 250, and 450,000, and get that same information for each of those. If we go to the next page, we have the summary of estimated values. Again, I think when we look at the total estimated market value of Clay County is $7,059,543,900. That breakdown is a tillable land is $1,812,863,900, and that's comprised of 25.7% of our total market value. Residential land buildings are $3,738,225,800, which is about 53%. Those two categories are historically between 78 and 81%, and this year they come in at 78.7%, with the remaining percentage of 21.3% attributed to commercial properties. When you take a look over the last 4 years, we've really kind of settled in. We saw the values of our tillable land really peak back in 2017, and we've just seen minor adjustments over the last few years. I would note that as part of this budget, on December 1st, this board voted to utilize an additional fund balance dollars to lower the levy of equivalent of 1.5%. While the board has gone on record multiple occasions not wanting to utilize fund balance to lower the levy as a part of their normal budgeting practice, there are really two contributing factors of why it could be done more responsibly this year. Number one, in 2019, Clay County realized an increase in fund balances, and that was due to unexpected increased revenues in multiple departments. We also saw higher than anticipated return on investments, and we also participated in a hiring freeze in October of last year. Secondly, this past year, we've also received federal funding through the CARES program for counties, cities, and townships. We were able to reimburse our budgets for salaries accounted for that were substantially different than what their duties would have been had it not been for the pandemic. The county has identified a number of positions within the public health department that met this criteria. In both cases, these funds either will remain or have remained based on previous levy requests of the Clay County citizens, and subsequently, the board felt that it was acceptable to use these dollars to lower the 2021 levy. Any questions or comments at this point? Let's see, additional, I have an additional packet that the commissioners have available to you. And based on that information, I wanted to just provide an updated summary of the 2020 tax levy by funds that we have seen throughout this budgeting process. If you, again, a reminder that initially this was a 6.27 budget on which we certified. If you go down into the middle of the page under tax levy, you'll see the fund balance there, that is $1,735,000. That is the total amount provided. We began this levy at $40,564,679. In that fund balance, in our previous certified budget, we were at $1,210,000, and so that 1.5% equaled $525,000. When we utilized the county program aid of $3,878,096, the spread levy limit went to $38,685,718, or a 4.77% increase. When we took into consideration the new construction growth that we spoke about earlier at 1.28, the net levy increase would go down to 3.49%. And so I did take the opportunity to work with Lori on this document that we spoke on earlier, on that $150,000 property. Under the change that we would be presenting here today, the county portion would go from $22.10 to $12.74. And so we would have a net increase or a net of $55.07 for our citizens. And so I think the last piece that I have in your packet, or last sheet that I have in your packet, is something I guess I've presented the last couple of years. I think that it's one thing for our commissioners to talk about how it's important it is to provide the most cost-effective levy, providing the best service to our citizens. But the document, the last document that you have, has a series of categories that's put together by the Minnesota State Auditor and talks about and looks at the comparisons with our other 87 counties in Minnesota. And so I think when you take a look at the four highlighted areas, I think one, we have the net tax levy per capita in Clay County. Clay County ranks 72nd lowest out of 86 counties listed in this comparison. Charges for service, whether that's through the recorder's office, planning and zoning, the charges that we provide our citizens in Clay County is 86 out of 86. When we look at our total expenditures or current expenditures, we rank the 75th out of 86, again on the low end. And even when we add the increases of our capital outlay for our recent projects of the Law Enforcement Center and Correctional Facility, we are 73rd out of the 86 counties. And so, again, I think it's important for our citizens to understand that this board looks and takes a very serious look in any kind of additional costs that we're asking from a levy perspective. But the goal every year is to make sure that we establish a fair and equitable levy. That's stressed from you to me, and also we stress that to our department heads. And again, I think this document really shows the effort and the work that goes into this board of making sure that we provide that levy that's well thought of and well planned. And with that, I would yield for any questions.
Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, but it may be a suggestion. Steve, when this particular page becomes our final document for the year, I'd like to see us do a footnote regarding the fund balances used and how we came up with those. As future boards look at this, it would become 2021 will become the previous years. So I think it's important that we footnote that explanation that you gave earlier. Thank you.
Good presentation, good explanation of the budget. Any questions? Go ahead, Jenny.
A statement, the blue proposed property taxes that citizens received in the mail, because of the action that this county board took a week ago to reduce that levy more, the number proposed tax necessarily the numbers that people see.
That's correct, Commissioner Mojo. Once we adopt the final levy and dollar amount, they'll be adjusted.
Lower.
That just pertains to the county part of it,
That's correct.
The others, moorhead city, townships and schools is still, whether they'll change or not, we don't know, but this would only affect the county part. Any further discussion?
Congratulations to Commissioner Campbell. He finally found a way to get that levy down from the proposed one in September, so, the first time in many years.
First time
Ever,
in 18 years. Yeah.
Okay, with that, we'll go into any questions concerning from the public, I guess. Is there anybody that is listed that wants to speak? Oh, you got someone there, okay. Why don't you come forward to one of the mics and let us know your name and,
My name is Joy Annette, and I live at 2610 Brookdale Road in South Moorhead. And I've been receiving the mails in here and lived down in that area for some time. I used to live in North Moorhead and just recently retired, so I'm living on Social Security. Every year now that I've been living down there, the taxes go up. My house payment now is over $1,000. I receive $1,500 from Social Security benefits. a $5, $6 increase is considerable to our elderly people. And, you seem to think, yeah, it's doable. Well, it's not that doable if it's going to, especially in these times. Right now, the Social Security hasn't gone up. They haven't gone up. They haven't gone up all these different percentages that we have here. And this is not including what Moorhead charges us for the public service that we have. I have no trees on my property, but I have to pay for them. I have to pay for removal for leaves. I have to pay for in and out services of water, which has a top amount on there. I don't use that much water. But all of these other little things, my electric bill usually runs about $40. My bill to the Moorhead Public Service is about $130. So the $75 is just little incidentals. They say, oh, well, you have a security light. I don't have a security light on my property. I don't have trees on my property.
Excuse me, do you have a comment concerning the budget, or are you just referring to your
Well,
taxes?
the budget here, I think, with the 150 and then you go to 200, my property assessment has not gone up.
Okay.
Yet the levies and the budget is going up.
Yes.
I don't think, if my property doesn't go up and if I want to sell, it's not going to do anything, other than people looking at what the taxes are. Well, your house is still worth the same as it did for the last 2 or 3 years, but your property taxes have went up for over 2 or 3 years. It went up almost $200 a year or more per year. So the budget that this council passes every single year is a hardship on your elderly population.
I agree with that, but as Mr. Larson explained, Clay County is one of the cheapest.
It is one of the
Honest, too.
cheapest, but when you start looking at per item, which he went through on here, some of these things you don't, why are we being looked at some of these things on here? When you go to, what was it, this page, whatever number that page was, and you start looking at, well, technology services went up. Okay, yeah, technology is going up. Should, the citizens have to, take that part of it? We have public health, went up 32%. I have to pay my own insurance. I'm not getting any part of this public health, but I'm paying for it.
Ma'am?
The Metro Council is going up 43%.
Ma'am?
Excuse me just a minute.
I just
Bo.
want to comment maybe on the public health piece. A lot of the increases that you're seeing, that department has dealt with COVID and the community response to COVID and the preparing of the vaccinations and helping to make sure our nursing homes have the supplies and the knowledge that they need to deal with COVID. So
Okay, I agree with that. I've had COVID.
Okay.
I was quarantined for 3 weeks. I'm still here. I have to deal with COVID. I have the after effects of it. I'm still taking inhalers. I'm not getting any part of this. I cannot apply for this housing that says, oh, you can apply for housing help. No, I don't do that. I will take care of my bills as most of our elderly do. We do have a lot of pride in that. We don't reach out for that. But yeah, I have survived the COVID. And one of the things, I won't be getting the vaccine. They're saying I don't really need it. They say, yeah, you might be able to get it again. I'm taking that chance because I don't have the money to do that. So don't tell me about COVID. I've been through it.
I'm sorry, I was just explaining to you why there was a larger increase in that department.
Right, and I heard what he was explaining, that we were going through, some of these things for, when he was going item by item on here. Unallocated general, and I understand that there will be people during the, the course of the year that'll come forward and ask for this and this and that, which it's still going up almost 20%, 18.9. These are things that you're saying, well, maybe it'll be there, maybe it won't. If it wasn't there last year, you're expecting it to go up again this year, and everything is being blamed on COVID. We don't know what's going to happen in COVID. We don't know if this vaccine will work. We don't even know if we'll get it until the end of the year. Next year, I'm talking about, not 2020, I'm talking about 2021. Most of it is going to be going to, our public service people, our nurses and our doctors, and those that, are working almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is, yeah, that's doable. But there's an awful lot, survival rates. A lot of people have gotten COVID and have survived. So as a community member of Moorhead, and I have been now for almost 40 years, I've seen my taxes go up from $60, when I lived up in North Moorhead, and totaling $363 per year, to going up over, got my bill here, over $2,234. That's quite an increase from $300. That's $2,000 more of what I was paying. It's kind of ridiculous for people to be surviving. And you think that just $5 on the budgets, even though they're itemized, and even though you're going, yes, this is what we're going to use each one for, you need to take a little bit more closer look. And it doesn't sound like much to this commission. But it can, it can be a life too, just as much as COVID can.
And I do think, and I appreciate your comments and coming forward here tonight. I think it is important to be clear, and maybe I wasn't, in mitigating through this initial budget. This board has asked us, we've cut roughly $2.2 million out of this budget. And so based on the part of what you explained and from the needs that Commissioner Mojo talked about, is there needs that have changed? And some of them are COVID related, and some of those are just making sure we're meeting the needs of our citizens. And so I think it's important. I want you to know that, again, this board has mitigated this current budget by over $2 million to get to the point that we're at.
And I've seen that, but, I've also seen from 2017 to 2021, which is 4 years, where it's increased almost $20 million. That's large. And it's your citizens who are taking that. It's not you as a commission, but, you're looking at your citizens and how much can they actually, take on. We can't take on much more. Thank you for listening, though.
Thank you for coming forward with your concerns. Is there anybody else out there, Matt? Okay. I guess that's, you got any further thing to move on? Do we-
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, historically, we've brought the budget for adoption the next week. Lori Johnson is not in the office this week. And with the new information that we received on the outlook for highway, we just would seek the board's thoughts on bringing this forward on December 22nd for adoption, if there's any issue with that.
As long as it's within statute, that it can
It would
be
be.
addressed at that point.
Okay. Any further Comments?
And what's going to be brought forward is this.
That's correct. By statute, we were required to provide the documentation on certification, the certified budget from October 1st. But what will be brought forward is the information on those last two documents.
Okay. With that, I don't know, we just adjourn, or there's the meeting is done, I guess, so.
Yeah, if there's no other, we would just adjourn.
Okay, we're adjourned.